Hi everybody, what is up and welcome back to my channel. Actually, this time we are on Onaire's channel. Welcome back to season 3 of What's Playing, which is going to be my bi-weekly show on Twitch where I talk to artists, DJs, musicians, and all sorts of music industry adjacent people about what they're listening to, what's on their playlist, and any music that they're interested in. I've decided to move onto Onaire's Twitch channel because I felt like Instagram Live wasn't doing the show justice. I wanted a bit of a longer platform, and Onaire generously donated some space on their channel. So I'm super excited to be here and to start season 3 off with a really exciting guest who I've been a fan of for a while as a DJ. Ariel Zetina is a Chicago based artist focusing in music production, DJing, and writing. Though her music can be considered techno, she takes inspiration from Chicago house, Belizean punta, and the queer club scene worldwide. These influences can be heard on 2020's MUA's At the End of the World EP and Marsh, 2019's Organism, Shell, and 2017's Cyst. Cyst. Her DJ sets have been worldwide. She's currently a resident at the legendary house club Smart Bar, co-runs the party mix series Rumors, and is on Disc Women's roster. She's also a playwright and has had her plays performed in Chicago, California, New York, and Baltimore. So I'm super excited to have her here. Amazing bio, super inspiring. I'm currently sitting on the floor because I'm in the middle of a move. I know there's a chair behind me, but the lighting is also really bad, so I didn't want to sit there and be ugly. So that is the setup today. And I'm going to invite Ariel to join in on the chat right now. I'm going to add her to the stream. Hi. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are things with you?
They're good. They're good. I also picked where I am sitting based on the lighting. So it's great.
Yeah, my lighting's not even good now because now it's fully. So in the time that I sat here and the sunshine moved, now I'm in I'm gonna have to relocate later. But for now, it's good.
You have to exactly.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining. I know that in the States things are opening up again. I know you've been gigging. How has that been to restart, move away from live stream, move into actual performance again?
It's been interesting. It's been just, I've really been happy to have, the energy from a live crowd and playing for a live crowd. But it's just it's this very in limbo time when the pandemic is still going on. So I feel like it's very I every time I've left a gig, and it's only been a few, but every time I've been like, what just happened? This seems like all a blur. So it's good, but also was it good? Yes.
Do you find that the mixes that you record at home versus the stuff that you play live, is it radically different, the types of sounds?
I would say it's the biggest difference for me is that when I'm doing a mix at home, I'm usually doing a lot of tracks I've newly dug for, or a lot of stuff I've oh, I forgot about this, and stuff that I wouldn't necessarily play at the club. Whereas at the club, I always feel like I'm oh, I can play all of these songs that, have been featured in a lot of my mixes before. I try not to repeat the same tracks too much. Sometimes, I make so many mixes, and sometimes tracks do repeat, but I really, really like new track lists, when stuff is going to be, permanently on the internet, but more permanent than a DJ set. But I think that's the main thing. I also think I play a little harder in the club because it's the club. And when I'm actually hearing the kick drum, it's much better than my headphones or my monitors.
Does it matter to you if you're opening or closing? Or are you still gonna go just as hard no matter what? 9 p.m., 9 a.m.
I am a big believer. My sort of opening set model, I feel is okay, I really like a slow ambient moment, or a chill house moment to start opening. But I also think in an opening set, you can literally, I have so many times where I literally go to 160, 170 BPM. I'm doing hardcore, and then I just go back to the half BPM. So I'll end up playing a 90 BPM R&B or something like that. So I'm always I really like thinking about the set I'm going to play before, when I'm doing an open set, and when it's really intentionally opening. I really like opening sets. And I would say I definitely do go harder in closing sets, but that is not to say I don't do both. I like going soft and closing sets too. I like
Oh, just like a easy like ride out. That's nice.
yeah, but it's definitely depending on the. I really like to think. I really am inspired by the actual event and the actual like what's happening in the room. So
Yeah,
I definitely try to. A lot of my sets I think are like different than each other. They're like kind of using the same ingredients in different ways.
that's cool. I always find that like for me personally, I think of like my favorite DJ shift is definitely closing because then you can play like all the stuff that doesn't really fit in at like peak hour, like some like Britney Spears remix or like Mambo Number Five, just stuff that you like and that you want to throw in, but like it wouldn't have a space somewhere else. And I know that like you can be like, oh, anything belongs, but sometimes it truly does not. And at the end of the night, there's all these like stragglers, and you can just you can just get weird with it. I think that's kind of like the most fun for me when I'm DJing. Do you think that the music, I know you make music, the music that you make, is it different or similar to stuff that you would listen to like on your, like, do you listen to your own music?
Oh my god! I was like, when I'm really drunk and heading home from the club, I listen to my music. I feel like I do listen to my music. I listen to my mixes. Because I'm always like, I saw this tweet that was like, yeah, I mean, I like listening back to see how I can get better as a mixer, and also like I know I love the track selection because I chose all the tracks, and I was like,
Yeah, you
that's
know
it.
it's gonna be a good mix.
Yeah, exactly. I do listen to my own productions, but I also don't to some extent because I get really self-conscious about it, and sometimes it takes me like a year or two to like rehear something and it's like, oh, I knew what I was doing. Like I'm like happy with this. But I mean it's always a goal of mine when I'm making productions to be able to use them in sets. So I always
Right.
try to, like, I always think I've been trying to marry my production sounds with my DJing sounds because like
Okay.
it's definitely when I started producing before I started DJing and I was making
Okay.
sort of like not informed by the club stuff. I mean, it was still like I'm saying not informed by the club, but it was still like all kick drummy and stuff. But it was much more like PC music hyperbop kind of moment when I started.
Right.
And I was like, and I was making for a performance art group. So I was making like very like
Oh, like very avant-garde.
yeah, like not four on the floor, like random samples of like things, like that kind of stuff. But I think just like as I started playing more and was focusing on DJing, I was sort of like, no, I actually like I'm really interested in like what this like sound that I feel like I got to form like playing in clubs. And it's definitely informed a lot of my production.
Oh, it's pretty cool. I find that like my stuff that I listen to and the stuff that I make and the stuff that I DJ is so separate from each other. Like it's all so different, and I'm always curious. And that's what I liked about pandemic was that the like DJs started to get weird, and they started to show us what they were like actually listening to in their mixes. Because like you go to a festival, you go to a party, like they're playing club bangers, but I want to know like what's on your private like Spotify. I need to know like what is the guilty pleasure, which is why I started the show because I was like, well, I got to talk to everybody and find out what they're listening to.
Oh my god, this is perfect because
because I'm so nosy.
I know exactly. I feel the same way because I listen to so much. Like I've really been trying to do like I don't want to say like themed mixes, but it's been a lot of like, oh, like what I'm actually listening to or collecting these kind of like sounds that I've like listened to the years. Cause yeah, I'm excited to get into it because I've been listening to I would listen to some stuff that's questionable taste, but that I love, but I'm always like, okay.
Oh, don't worry. This morning I was listening to the Jonas Brothers classic track SOS. So
Love.
I just love it. It's so good. And honestly, I love the video too. I still kind of watch it
Okay,
sometimes.
I'm going to watch it today because I feel like this is like my love for Justin Bieber Baby, like the original Justin Bieber track. So good. Like, and
Such a good track.
like, oh, so good.
I think about him every day. And I just love everything he does. The one thing I didn't really like that he did was like that last album, like what was it called? Changes, the red one. Not a fan because I'm not like a big R&B lover. Like I'll listen to it, but I'm not like super crazy about it. But the rest of the stuff, the most recent album, also pretty good. Definitely like questionable choices for sure, like within the record. But overall, I'd like to see Bieber going back to that EDM vibe.
Yes. Oh my God. Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel this exact same way. Yeah. When
Yeah. So So tell us, what are your questionable listening choices? I need to know.
I was like,
Will I know it, or is this like, am I gonna look at
yeah,
it and be
no,
like,
I was like, you'll definitely. Okay, so what is the album the album I've been putting on all the time when I leave my house is the Olivia Rodrigo album, and which is like everything. But I was like, I can't believe I'm this obsessed with an album, and it's like literally about like being 17. But this actually got me on a whole thing because I was like, the reason I love this is because I'm obsessed with Ashley Simpson's debut album, Piece of Me, or Pieces of
I'm
Me.
obsessed with that album. I used to have a poster in my room. And before the internet or whatever, like before all this stuff happened, I used to listen to the album and like write down the lyrics.
Because it's giving that, it's giving like drama, it's giving like teen angst. Oh my God. Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, I knew
Yes.
you would. Yeah, but I was like, the reason I love the Olivia Rodrigo album is literally this Ashley Simpson album because she's being just like, and I was like, wow, that she never gets credit, and you never hear Ashley Simpson in the club. But I was also
So
thinking
true.
about her song "Out of My Head." I was listening to. Do you remember that? Like when she like went like full like dance moment
Wait, was that, what album was that on?
on. That was
Was it the
on.
second one?
I think it was. I think on the second one. Let me look it up. Second Ashley Simpson album.
I forget what it's called, even though I had the poster.
Oh, Me. Oh my God, that's a great name. I think it was on this. I think it was on this. Did she? I mean, how many albums did she have? That's the real question.
She had one after that, I think. It was like a different one, but I don't think I listened to the one after this. But
Maybe it might have been the third one then, because this track is like, so it's like Britney Spears. It's like crazy. It's like the 180 that she did. Anyways, I could be going and looking in this. Oh yeah, it is on the third album. It's on
okay.
World.
I
Yeah.
feel like I'd like grown out of my Ashley Simpson phase. I should have like known I was a lesbian. Like when I was watching, like I would buy the album, and I'd be like, why am I obsessed with this? And then like the poster like had her like tits out. I was like, wow, this is amazing. And I would like put it in my closet and like literally like sit in my closet and like look at the Ashley Simpson poster and like worship it like a little shrine. I don't know how I didn't know I was getting gay till I was like 19, but that's beside the point. But yes, I'm so happy you brought this record up. Nobody talks about it. You're absolutely right.
It's so good, and it's so I'm like, isn't it an inherently gay record? I was like, I would argue, yeah, totally,
Yes, it's a
exactly,
queer record.
exactly. It's like it's giving that, it's giving the it's really because she's giving emotion, but she's also giving like, and she's giving like, all kinds of like glamour and beauty without it being like, too on the nose. I was like, wow. Yeah, the third, I actually don't know the whole third album, but that's Out of My Head. That song is so good. And I was like, this is the song I'm gonna play in the club if I play Ashley Simpson in the club. But I want to play Autobiography, or I want to play like La La, but I don't know if I can do that.
Wow, that's so good.
It's so good.
I was so like sheltered as a kid. I didn't know what like La La meant when I heard the song. I was like, oh, what does it mean? I honestly thought it was about peeing on the floor.
It's honest, yeah. I mean, it's very she really
It's
said she's
subtle.
gonna go there without saying it, and I'm like, yeah. I mean, it's so funny like hearing all these songs and you hear them again, and you're like, damn, this is about sex, and I had no
All
idea.
about sex. They're all about sex.
I was just talking about how in when I would watch that '70s show when I was growing up, I didn't know that they were smoking weed in all the basement scenes. It's like all like smoky and stuff, and they're like, I was like, oh, they're just like saying like dumb shit. I had no idea there was, and then I like watched it like when I was in like in college or like after that, and I was like, I had no idea this was about smoking weed when I was watching this.
Right? It's so like weird rewatching stuff as an adult, even like Pixar movies, like because they know that parents are going to be watching those with their kids, so they put like those little adult jokes. So like I would be rewatching like Finding Nemo or whatever, and I'm like, oh my god, this is very inappropriate.
Exactly.
But a kid wouldn't get it. Like a kid would completely over their head. It's very interesting to revisit old favorites, especially things from like your early teen years, I think. Because like you think you're so smart, you think you're such an adult, and then when you're like 28, 27, you revisit it and you're like, you didn't know anything.
Like I feel like everyone I knew, including myself, was obsessed with like Moulin Rouge and the Moulin Rouge soundtrack, and I'm like, for what reason? Like, why were we all obsessed with that? Like,
what were people obsessed with that?
I mean, I was a theater kid, so everyone
Okay.
was obsessed with that. So maybe it's just my life. I was like,
Your circle.
was like fucking upset, and like whenever it came out, because I remember my mom wouldn't let me see it when it first came out because it was like, oh well, because I guess it's about a sex worker. I was like, why wouldn't you let me see it? It's like a musical. I was like, oh, I guess it's literally about sex work.
Right. Well, this is a good like segue into another question. What's your favorite soundtrack for like a movie or a thing? I don't think I've ever asked anybody on the show that question because nobody's brought it up.
So actually, the first thing that comes up is this is actually a really hard question because I love soundtracks. I love so okay. These I'm gonna try to like be like these are the first ones that come up. So in terms for video game is the first thing that comes up. I could literally video game soundtracks are my favorite like
Yes.
in the entire world. They're like so much. I also always think about how much drum and bass, for example, I like learned from like video games and stuff like that.
God, yeah, it's the action scenes.
It's so, oh my gosh, like have you ever, sorry, I'm going on a tangent, but the original Resident Evil movie has one of the best soundtracks in the entire world, like so good, and it's like so expected because it's like the Resident Evil movie, but it's like really good techno, really good drum and bass. But I was just talking to my friend and they were like, oh yeah, like none of it is on the actual soundtrack, like it's all just in the movie and you have to watch it. But okay, but my actual the like life-changing soundtrack for me is S03E01, which is like this like snowboarding game that came out in like early 2000s. But
just for PC or like was it like on GameCube or something?
It was for GameCube. I had it on GameCube. I think it was a PS2 game as well.
Okay.
I think it was maybe originally PS2, then got GameCube. But yeah, it's like this like I always think about it too because they use the word Uber in it like before Uber was a thing, so they use it for like its original thing, and they always go like your tricks are like your Uber tricks and then your super Uber tricks. But like the soundtrack has all of this just crazy like it's like for example, it's like Aphrodite is like the first time I ever heard an Aphrodite track, for example, is on this album, and like there's like a on the sequel, like I'm like only remembering sequel artists, but it's like Fisher Spooner and like Basement Jaxx and like all these people. It's like so, but that soundtrack, unbelievable, and it always reminds me of snowboarding, but it's like so good for the club because it's like it's like all the moments. There's this track Gin and Sin that like
I love that name. It's very sexy.
Gin and Sin. It's so, I know, it's so ridiculous, these names. I'm like, wow. It's very that mood though, very this like very almost like the soundtrack gives me like 6 a.m. club in like Italy type vibes.
Yes.
It's like very like, or maybe not 6 a.m., like 4, like yeah. It's like it's giving me like groovy but hard. But yes, so just yeah, S03E01 and also like the Jet Set Radio soundtrack are so good, which is like I think like similar music. And then the other thing, I also like I'm a huge like Broadway musical fan because I'm fucking crazy. And
I used to be like really into Broadway as well. My mom and I would like take trips down to New York to watch like Broadway plays, and we would like get all dressed up for it. It was a whole thing. And I was like, I love theater, and I would like buy the posters and put them in my room. And I was like, I'm gonna join the improv team, but like I didn't because I was too shy. So I think I'm like an observer from afar.
Wait, what is your like iconic Broadway show that you're like, yes, this was like an iconic moment
that I saw on Broadway and that like I loved? It would have to be Curtains. I don't know, I just loved it. But I also there's some
I love that like we're both deep enough like Broadway fans that I know exactly what Curtains is.
Right. It's not such like a pop-in one. I even had the poster. But I also really like, what was that one? I didn't see this on Broadway. I saw like a remake of it or whatever, but I saw Oklahoma, which was a good.
Did you see the one recently? The like really like the pared down one? Like,
no.
Oh my God, they just did this crazy version that was like 6 people on stage. Like, I should send you like pictures of it. It looked amazing. I was
Minimal Oklahoma.
Yeah, it was like, and I was trying to go every time I was in New York, but like always like the thing I'm not trying to do is like, I like go to a rave on like Friday or Saturday and then like, oh, like let's wake up for like a matinee like at 2 p.m. Like I've never been able to do it, much less
You
like
have to have duality. That's like you go to the rave and then you go to the Broadway show. Like that.
I have to, like work it in to buy the ticket, so I have to go. But yeah, I really wanted to go to that Oklahoma. It was really I'll send you some videos though, but there's like some videos of like the girl doing I Can't Say No is like so fucking good. Like she
Oh my
just
God.
the voice.
Wow. I
Mhm.
love that this like went into a Broadway talk. I honestly I still listen to some of the soundtracks from musicals that I like. Um,
Mhm.
like for me, one classic one is gonna have to be Next to Normal.
Yes.
It is, I believe it's off Broadway. Like it's not Broadway, but I was obsessed with it for years, and I still listen to like I bought that soundtrack on iTunes like back when you could do that and have the music or whatever, and I would listen to it all the time. And every now and then when I don't have like data or whatever, I'll be like on the subway, I'll like open up my iTunes instead of my Spotify, and I'm like put it on shuffle, and it's the whole soundtrack. That's all it is.
Yes. I love that. I fucking saw Next to Normal on Broadway. I fucking saw Alice Ripley go crazy.
I saw it too. Oh my god! But years ago, and then one time I came to Toronto, and I was like, "Oh my god, I gotta go!" But then I didn't go. I was so sad.
Oh my gosh. That was like the last thing I think I saw was like a Chicago. I saw Billy Porter in Kinky Boots when he came to Chicago when it was like trying out, and it was like a 4-hour version of Kinky Boots because they didn't cut anything. And it was like so clear, like there was all these characters they were gonna cut. And I was like, this is crazy to watch this. But that was the last thing because my friend was literally working on it and was like, "Do you want free tickets?" And I was like, "Yes, totally."
Wow, that's so dope.
But oh my gosh, I have a musical theater. I did a for TT that label, like FKA Tobago tracks. I did a musical theater. My like mix for them is a musical theater mix, but it's like all my favorite musical theater songs. But I really the two I think the two soundtracks for me are the Hair soundtrack. I think is like the best music just like in general, and I always think there's like so many crazy stuff on that, and I always think about how that was sort of like the last time that like songs were on the radio that were in musicals. Like I feel like that was the last thing. And then there's also this musical that was done in Chicago, but then it transferred to Broadway. The Adding Machine, that's fucking crazy. The music in it is insane. I feel like you would really think it. I was like on this conversation, it's based on like a play about like a man who's like working in a factory and then he gets like replaced by a machine.
I'm gonna make a robot.
Yeah, it's very bad. It's very like post-apocalyptic, like Eraserhead Metropolis sort of vibes, but like a musical. But my brother in a drama competition in high school, my brother, because I gave him this track, and then they basically like were like gonna win like the state competition.
Right.
And then people were like, this isn't music. You can't win because it's literally like the song that they did is literally like one person doing like a glass bottle and then one person like there's like no singing in it, but it's just like crazy. It's so good. I could go on about this musical forever. It's so good. Wow. I've never seen it. I literally just have the soundtrack.
Oh wow! Does it ever like tour again? Like, will you ever see it?
Honestly, I feel like it wasn't. It like I feel like it didn't. I mean, it literally only if someone is like, we should do this again. I was like, we have to do it. We should do it. I was like, the music is so good though. It's honestly like crazy to me that it isn't done more. But I've also never seen it, so I don't know what it's.
Yeah, I mean, maybe you go watch it and you're like, hey, this is literally the worst musical I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, damn, like who knows? Yeah.
The mystery is better because now you can imagine this storyline.
Mm-hmm. That's like also what I feel about like this musical, The Wild Party. That's another musical I've never seen before, but it's like and it's like the cast is crazy. It's like Tony. Do you know Wild Party? It's like
No.
Tony Collette and Eartha Kitt and
wow.
Who else is in it? Mandy Patinkin.
That's like a heavy hitters.
It's crazy. It's like all famous people. Wow. But then there is a same, and then there's another. It's based on this like 1920s poem. about like flappers and like
Okay.
and there was literally two musicals, one on Broadway, one off Broadway, by different composers at the same exact time.
Right.
And I like the one that was on Broadway, but it's like the one that less people like, because the other one likes everyone else likes the other one, but it has Taye Diggs and Idina Menzel in it. So they both have famous casts. Like, it's such a weird, and they're the exact same material that they're adapting, and they came out
random.
the same year. Very
wow.
weird. Yeah. But that musical is amazing. The version with Toni Collette's amazing.
Wow, that's so wow. Okay, I'll look into that. Maybe I can like find it online. I'm a big like I'm a musical lover. Granted, I haven't seen a lot of musicals, but like lately I've been like thinking about watching them again. So this is a really nice conversation to remind me that maybe I should just do it.
You should. I honestly, I need to make. I will like drunkenly make my friends watch musical theater YouTube and just go from like musical theater to and I'm like, this is the shit. It's like this is. I'm like very shameless about it, but I'm like, I'm fully like, theater kids are the worst kids in the world, and like fully participating in theater kid culture forever.
I mean, I feel you. I went to an art school as well. I was in the visual arts program, and the theater kids were like a constant, incessant nightmare. In the hallways, like singing, yelling, yes, and like everything, a lot of chaos happening in their room for sure. Always like random stuff too. And the teacher was terrifying, obviously.
Exactly. We're always like the most militant teachers, and I'm like, why? Like,
this is so serious. I'm like, oh my god, isn't that serious? I mean, like, I used to take musical theater when I was a kid. I was not good. Because I can't sing, and like I was such a shy child, but I had such a fun time. Like, I guess being like just around the stage, you know what I mean? Like, I just liked being there more than I really liked performing. I always wanted to just like hang around. I was like, I don't care if I have a part. Like, I'll be a tree. I just want to see what you guys are up to.
That's very, I relate. I was super shy as a kid too. I like definitely feel that. That's very relatable of like how I got into it. Yeah.
I want to go back to what you were talking about initially. So you were listening to the Olivia Rodrigo album. I have two questions to follow that. Number one, what is your favorite song off the album? And number two, do you, like, as an adult, feel any type of way about listening to music that's like by a teenager? Because nowadays we're in this like culture that fetishizes youth. So many of the top stars are in their teens. Like, you know, I'm almost 30. I'm like, wow, I'm ancient. And Billie Eilish is 18, right? Like, I'm always, I don't know, it's hard to juggle it because like I want to listen to it, and sometimes I do enjoy it, but then I'm like, oh, but like the content, like lyrically, it just doesn't match up with anything I'm feeling because I'm almost 30. Like, I'm gonna be 28 next month, and I mean, mentally I'm almost 30, and I don't know. I'm like, well, I can't relate to this at all. Like, and if I could relate to it at 17, like, yeah, for sure, but I just don't feel that way anymore. So like the music could be good, but is it like appropriate? Like, it feels kind of, I don't know, there's like some weird balance. So I don't know, I want to know what you thought about that, and also what your favorite song from the Olivia.
I love the oh, sorry. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, did I freeze? Sorry about that.
I think for a second, but I was like, the world of the internet. It's actually something I think a lot about, because I am 30, and I'm like very like, wow, I'm really listening to the Olivia Rodrigo album when I'm 30 years old, and like fully feeling my life to it, and like fully like crying and stuff. Happier is my favorite one on the album. It's so good. And also I would say a close second is also Brutal. The first track is so good, but it's like literally she's singing about like not being able to drink yet, like, and I'm like, wow, like how am I relating to that? But you know, I was actually I also think about this in terms of like, I was like, the second you were like, I was like, who am I listening to that's a teenager? And then I was thinking about, did you get into the, I should just be typing this into the chat. I didn't even realize I could. The Emily Montez like hyperpop album. She's like this like 5-year-old rapper, and she made the best hyperpop album that exists. Wow. There's all like 7-second songs, but I was like, wow, these I don't know. I think it's interesting because I think Olivia Rodrigo in a lot of ways, like the reason I like her is because like I think she's doing a specific thing that Taylor Swift wants to do, but she's actually doing. And I think it's really cool I feel like she has a really intense like connection to like being able to project an emotion and like into her voice or something like that. Like she's very
Okay.
like intentional, and I feel like she's just. I feel like she's going to be remembered as like for like in the same way that like we were all listening to like Ariana Grande, but like I was like in my like early 20s when Ariana Grande was like like blowing up, and
Yeah.
even now it's like wow, she's like fully adult now. She's fully like in her adult
Yeah.
phase. I
She's
feel like
grown, right?
yeah, and I feel like Olivia is going to be that way.
Okay. I've not heard of this artist, but I'm very intrigued. I'm always like I'm hesitant when it comes to like a novelty like 5-year-old, 9-year-old artist, right? Because I'm always like what's interesting, I don't know, right? Like cause I'm always like, oh, it's a 9-year-old DJ and I'm like, yeah, it's a 9-year-old DJ. Like what do you want me to do with it, right? So I'm always kind of hesitant to like dive into it, but this seems interesting and I like the idea of like a child making hyperpop because I don't know. I mean, it is kind of like it's. I love hyperpop and I listen to it all the time, but it's like toy music almost, right? I like the idea of a kid like playing with it. And I think to me, like when it comes to making music and performing music, something that's really important is this like aspect of play. Like it has to be fun. It can't always be serious. It has to be fun, or I'm not having a good time.
And that was something I actually reminded myself for my last EP was because I was like, why do I hate this? And then I was like, I'm literally not having fun with it. And then that I feel like sort of like unlocked everything. And yeah, I always try to remember that. But it's hard to remember sometimes. It gets so serious in the studio. And you're like, I have to do this thing and I have to like this. But yeah, I mean the Emily Montez, I put one of her songs in an ambient mix because it's literally her singing like about like she's like take me away, I want to go outside, like super auto-tuned, just like super. And but it's like her singing she wants to go outside and play and live her life, and I'm like damn, like she's really like 5 years
She
older
gets
than
it.
the pandemic. Like she's really speaking for a whole I don't know, she's like speaking for a whole generation, and I feel like that sort of audacity. And also her like whoever her like I'm assuming it's her dad that's the producer, but maybe that's
Yeah.
just being like problematic or like being like, oh yeah, her dad's but like I see it for her dad. I see it for whoever's producing her albums. She did a Club Emily album.
Wow.
Yeah, but I mean, I think that's I think that's maybe what I feel
Okay.
with these younger artists because it's like it's like I don't know. I very like music for music's sake, and I'm like like I'm here for this. Like I don't know. Like I do think about it, but I guess it doesn't really stop me from like listening to stuff. But
Yeah, and
also,
enjoying it.
yeah, I kind of like I feel like I'm like, what am I trying to say? I don't know, but I mean, I think it'll be a conversation I'll have more and more as I get older too, because I very much like I think about my older friends and they're not listening to Olivia Rodrigo that I know of, but
Right. No,
are they?
I have friends that are listening to Olivia Rodrigo. I think most of my friends are listening to Olivia Rodrigo. And I think that I saw a TikTok that was like, why are all millennials listening to Olivia Rodrigo? And they were saying that it was because she is basically Paramore.
Yeah, totally,
And I
exactly.
was like, I think I froze for a second, but I think that was like, I thought that was interesting because I never grew out of my emo phase at all. Like to this day, if I can find some like thread of like connectivity to like emo life and My Chemical Romance and Fall Out Boy and Panic at the Disco and Thursday and all these bands, like I will take it and grasp onto it forever. So I did find it like because I saw that TikTok, I was like, oh, I'll give the Olivia album like a chance. Maybe it's not really my style. I tried. It was like, okay, I'm not gonna like listen to it again. But I did think that connection was really interesting because I know a lot of people working in like hip hop, house, and techno now who were emo kids before. Like we all really just migrated.
That I mean, I also had my emo phase for sure, and emo is like a huge like part of like the music I like make or like I feel influenced by emo in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
I'm always like it hit my high school so hard. Like everybody was emo in my high school for a second. Like my like that was a moment.
Iconic, amazing.
It
I
was,
think in
it
my
was
high school people tried to be emo, but like we had uniforms, so
oh my gosh. See, that's like I like love that. That's even more like My Chemical Romance too. That's like the video, the high school video where they're all in like the uniforms.
oh my God. Oh yeah. Honestly, I loved having a uniform because I am not a fashion person. And as soon as I was told that I could wear the same thing every day, I was like, God bless. Like it was
I love
amazing.
that. You're just like, let's go, let's do
I was
this.
like, let's go. I have other things to do. I'm not trying to like sit around and think of an outfit. And like since then, I've just been wearing all black all the time. This year, I decided to start wearing white shirts, very dramatic, but still a uniform nonetheless.
I'm obsessed. There's such I love doing an all black outfit. It's like a moment, and there was definitely like I had like a couple of years when I only wore all black, and it was amazing. It was
Yeah,
great.
it's the best. You feel so powerful. I was like, I'm the king of the world. Like it's the best. Everybody wants to fuck me.
Very the true moment, the true club girl is, you know.
Oh my God. I got on that note, I got an invite to like a rave that happened this past Saturday. I didn't end up going because the location got moved really far away, but on the invite it said, for aesthetic reasons, we ask everyone to wear strictly black.
Exactly. I
I
love
was
that.
like, I mean, I get it. Like I totally understand.
Yeah. It's a beautiful moment when that happens. It's such a different, and it's especially because like I feel like it's in Chicago, there's like parties like that, and then there's parties where it's like, you know, it's like only drag queens and club kids, but it's like full like the same music, and so it's like you never kind of know what to expect, which is like I always love, and I'm always like LOL, but I love doing both, and I'm like yes.
Just
Um,
yeah, do whatever you want.
I
Well,
I went to a I remember going to an emo. There was like my friends were doing like an emo night at a club like a couple
used
years
to
ago. And I was
DJ
like,
those.
yes. And the two things I realized were A, like people aren't as into emo as I am when I was there because I was like losing my shit and everyone was just kind of like standing around and I was like, I had no idea. I was like, I thought everyone was into this, but apparently not.
Oh my
Um,
God.
and then I also realized that because they were playing like a lot of like sort of like Chiodos, like really sort of like screamo music.
Yes.
And
Oh my God.
it was
So
a
good.
moment. I was in the club and everyone was just going the fuck off, and or all the DJs were because it was like deep. But I was like, I realized that the emo I like is like the most depressing emo. It's like I like the ones where it's like I like singers where like they sound like they're like literally like this is the most dramatic thing they ever said. Like I
Like your like last breath, like that.
like I just like everything is so like yeah. And then I also love sort of like scene emo like Rocket Summer I was into and
Oh
like
my
that sort of
God. What was your like go-to album
oh my god.
as a kid, or even like go-to single? Not even a kid, like when, however old we were when emo was happening, like so like 15, 16, 17. That was like the peak for me, I would say.
Okay, so the albums, okay, what are the albums I know like back to back? Honestly, the one that comes up first is that's something the first North, I think it's called the Something Corporate album. I know
God,
I was obsessed with that, and then like
underrated band. Good choice.
it's honestly I think because my friend was like one of my friends in like freshman year was obsessed with Something Corporate, and I feel like I learned about Something Corporate like because I remember, and then like Jack's Mannequin blew up. Like Jack's Mannequin also is like such a moment to me too, and like
Oh, good.
uh I would say that album for me is the one that pops out as like the album. But I don't know. I mean, I also like feel like a lot of the emo I knew and had was like I only would know like 3 or 4 tracks. Oh, also, I mean, this isn't really emo, but I kind of associated in the same thing. But like the Hello Goodbye album, like that
Oh my
first,
God,
uh, destroys me. Like
so
that.
good.
Yeah,
That that album spoke for like a generation, honestly. Do you ever like buy like do you collect vinyl?
I do. I do.
Do you ever buy these old like my friend collects vinyl and her whole thing is like wanting to buy like old favorites on vinyl. So she got like the My Chem record when they like repressed Black Parade on like that bloodstained vinyl or whatever. Like all this stuff, like that's kind of like something that she likes to do. And I'm like, do you buy the physical copies of your old favorites like just to have?
Okay. What old favorites do I actually I sometimes will buy copies of my new favorites, I would say, but not I feel like I don't actually have a lot of copies of my old favorites. Like I would say that the ones that I was like the records that I feel like have come out recently that I was like, I must own this on vinyl. It has to happen are I mean, this one is even that recent, but the Misa, the fantasy album, that pink vinyl is like one that I'm like, this is like my favorite album ever and is amazing. And then I also I actually just got gifted the Anna Roxanne, the record of her first EP.
Nice.
That's like literally like life changing and was like the only thing I was listening to for like a long ass time. And then Jasmine Infinity's album I just got. But I was like, I feel like I've like been like, I need the new classes. Like those are the three albums that come to mind where I was like, I need a copy of this because this is like one of my favorite albums ever. But I actually don't have a lot of my original, but I was actually just talking to my friend about how I need to go over to her house and smoke a blunt because we're both like deep Joanna Newsom fans. And and she has East on vinyl. And I was like, why don't I have any Joanna Newsom on vinyl? It was fucking insane.
Joanna Newsom, not a lot of people talk about her. I used to work at HMV, which for people not in Canada is like a record store. They used to sell records and CDs and like DVDs and stuff. And there's some in the UK as well, but the Canadian branch shut down a few years ago, a Canadian like arm of the company. But I used to work there, and I had a friend there, and she was into like very like obscure music, and she put me on to Joanna Newsom. And I don't know, man, like thinking, I don't know, like working at the record store, like showed me a lot of things. It felt like I was in a movie when I was working there. But Joanna Newsom, wow, she is amazing. I think that more people should listen to her.
Have you ever seen her live before?
No, I never seen her live.
Oh my gosh. It's honestly insane. On it like that, I think for me, she's like one of those people I've seen like 3 or 4 times, and I think I've seen her. Now. I cried but I'm like a deep. I'm like I have a Fruit Plum pear tattooed on me. I'm like a deep. Where is it? You can't even. It's hard to see on this camera. I'm like,
I believe you.
Like yeah, exactly. This tattoo that I wrote is I was like, isn't this an avocado? And I'm like, no, it's a peach. But I was like, it's not shaped like an avocado, but go off.
You know, some people just don't know their fruits.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I always think about how like some fact about fruits that we only eat like less than 2% of like the world's fruits that grow, and like yeah, there's like all of these fruits I think specifically in the Amazon, there's like hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different kind of fruits that don't really have names because they never were really like
like no, not like cultivated for like consumption. Can you eat them? Like if you saw them, could you eat it, or would you die?
I think you can eat them, but they're not in like sort of like there's no concepts around that. See, this is me like trying to like explain a YouTube video I saw like 2 years ago. But I mean,
you remember, which is pretty impressive.
I feel like it's like this thing where the reason they know this stuff is because like it's like there's certain indigenous tribes in South America that like have names for these fruits, but a lot of them are like lost. But it's like very like that kind of thing where like it was a very pick and choose type thing,
right?
But this is me trying to explain this and like that. But yeah, I always think about that and about how there's probably so many more like cures for things because there's so much like vegetation and like and stuff that people just literally don't know about.
Oh my god, there's so much stuff in the world. There's so many things, and half of them like can and will kill you. So just be careful eating random like fruit and random mushrooms. Definitely be careful with the mushrooms. Oh my gosh, so I'm a mushroom lover. My dad and I were walking a couple weeks ago, and we found some mushrooms on the side of the road, which we took obviously. And we cooked them and we ate them because we knew that they were like regular mushrooms for eating. But I posted on Instagram and everybody was like, oh my God, like you're gonna die. I'm like, it's just regular mushrooms from the grocery store. You're fine. But and aside.
No, I saw that. I can't believe people were I was like, they should watch one mushroom documentary, and then they would
Mushrooms are amazing. Amazing. I read this book called Entangled Life. It changed my fucking worldview. I got really into mushrooms in pandemic though, because I was like, well, I need a hobby. Let me grow them in my house. And now I'm obsessed, and that's all I talk about. And every time somebody sees a mushroom related thing, I kind of like screwed myself with this one though, because now anytime anybody sees anything mushroom related, they send it to me. I'm like, I should have just kept this to myself.
I've had stuff like that where I get sent stuff and I'm like, I can't believe I'm getting sent all of these things that are just about this
all
one.
the time.
I much like I wish I knew more, because I've done like a little sort of like I did like an intro to foraging thing once, and I was like, holy shit, this is crazy, this is amazing. There's this restaurant I really want to try. I actually don't even know if it's open. I read an article about it literally years ago, and you know how things go, and it is still open. But it's this restaurant where the chef literally goes and forages every single weekend. And it's like one of those like prefix menus where you like, but it's like gastropub foraging, or not gastropub. It's like fancy foraging food. And I'm like, what the fuck?
Right. Fine dining.
Yeah.
That's pretty sick. I know. I want to ask you our final question, but before I do, because we're running out of time, and I know you have to go, but before I do that, I want to do an aside of like, that is sick with the mushroom foraging. There's a restaurant in Toronto where the guy, I believe, like hunts his own meat. And when I was still eating meat, I would go, it specializes in like game meats. They have like venison and like quail eggs and all that kind of stuff. So when I was still eating meat, I took my partner in there a few years ago, and it was amazing. And if you're in Toronto, it's called Antler, and I believe it's still open because a couple years ago some vegans got really mad at it, and they did a bunch of protests, which just gave it like more attention. And I gotta say, like, I mean, like, I'm vegan now and I'm like low-key embarrassed, but vegans historically not the best at spreading the message, let's just very annoying. Let's just keep it to yourself and we'll all do what we want to do. But that is my side thing. We are getting close to running out of time. I want to ask you my last question, which I like to ask everybody who comes on the show, which is, if you could hear one record for the first time again, what would it be?
Oh my God. And I knew the answer immediately,
my God, you knew right away.
I was like, is this really the answer I'm picking? But it is. It's
Ashley Simpson.
Yeah, it's Ashley Simpson. Imagine. I was like, I don't know if I need that crying storm the first time I heard that. The one I always think of is the of Montreal album. God, and I can never put Heimdall's Gate, like a Promethean curse.
I'm looking it up right now.
Heimdall's Gate, like a Promethean curse. It's that. I think that's what it's called. That of Montreal album, where it was like their album about like becoming this new femme identity concept album. It's I don't know. Are you a Montreal fan?
I listened to a couple albums here and there. I will say that I've not consumed the entire catalog because it is huge.
It's so huge. And
there's a lot of respect it, and I've enjoyed what I've heard, but I wouldn't consider myself like an active fan.
I was a deep fan in high school, and then kind of like and then there's like a sort of like era where it's like I like of Montreal from like the first album up to like a certain album, and then after I'm like, I can't listen. But this album for me was like the perfect like amalgamation of like the sort of like, this was the sort of like, I'm going in a decidedly like, because I feel like it was always electronic in some ways, but this is like I'm in a decidedly like non-organic sound, I guess, like a more that's at least what I feel about this one. And it's like, but I think the reason that I'm having all this brain too is because I'm like I'm working on a mix right now that's sort of like this a lot of what we've talked about too, but this like early 2000s, or not even like mid 2000s maybe, in like indie electronic moment where it's like bands with guitars, but it's also very informed by drum machines and stuff
like some dance influences. What year did this album come out?
This was in, I want to say 2006.
Okay. So like still like relatively recent. But I feel like the 2000s, like those 90s were a really good time for a lot of bands and artists to experiment with sound like heavily. Like that was when we saw like honestly like the beginnings of hyperpop.
Yeah.
In like 2006, 2007, like The Millionaires, like even Jeffree Star early stuff, like very
Wow.
heavily, like, oh my gosh, I have a Jeffree Star CD from like back in the day when he used to play Warped Tour, and it's autographed.
Oh my
So,
God, I did not know he used to wave Warped Tour. That totally makes sense. I have like a Warped
right?
Tour compilation. That's one of my favorite like
Oh
things.
my gosh, so I have like the 2010 one, and it bangs. It's so
I
good.
do. I'm gonna find what year I have. I want to say I have like 2007 or something.
Oh wow, yeah, that would have been so good. I can't believe Warped Tour is over. So sad, but like I would not go, so I don't even know why I'm upset.
I do remember I had two friends that went to that last Warp Tour ever thing like recently. I was like, of course y'all went. I was like, I love. Oh my God. Wow. The beginning of Aisha. Do you know Aisha Erotica as well? Do you listen to her?
No, I
Oh my
don't.
God.
Should I
Aisha
know?
Erotica she's very like Jeffree Star era but she's very like I think she produced some of Slater's stuff. Like
No
that's
way.
how she came to fame, but she's like
Love that crossover.
yeah, she's the original. She's like I feel like she's very that like early hyperpop. I was also like Hot Chip. Hot Chip is so hyperpop to me.
I love Hot Chips. So good. Really good stuff. Like honestly, like Hot Chips one of those bands like consistently good.
I honestly need to go into Hot Chip discography. I don't really know them too much by them.
Oh yeah, go on a hunt. I have to be honest, I haven't like followed them in the last few years either, but I did go see them in show and concert like, a couple years ago, and it like
Yeah.
probably at this point like 3 years ago because pandemic like lost me a year. I don't know what happened, but yeah, they're good. All right, I know that we're running out of time. I know you have to go, and so do I. I'm gonna go get some mango sticky rice.
Yeah.
But thank you so much, Ariel, for your time.
This was
Thanks so much for joining. We're gonna put your all your handles in the about. Thank you, Onaire, for having us. And any final words, any goodbyes? We'll let you. This is gonna be airing next week. So today, when you're watching it, is when it's airing.
yeah. Oh my gosh, amazing. I'm just excited for everyone to hopefully jump into some very specific musical pathways we talked about. It's like I honestly am very excited to like curate my playlist for the afternoon now.
Yes. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna go home and I'm home. I'm gonna go and put on some like the Hairspray soundtrack.
And I was like, I'm gonna put on like brand new like that emo band. And be like,
Oh my god, my whole brand new. Like I don't like listening to them because the main guy is like a abuser. But I will sometimes indulge because it like very the mood. I'm like no other band, right? No other band like that.
yeah.
But
We're
yeah,
in the emo spiral.
yeah, we gotta go before we start like crying or whatever. But yeah, thank you so much again, Ariel. Thank you, Onaire, for having us, and thank you everyone for joining. We'll see you in a couple weeks. All right, goodbye. Oh, I'm gonna stop.